Neil, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We had Bull as one of our best films of the year. It's such a good film. We like it so much. Um, Paul Williams, the director, had mentioned that your initial involvement, he was very keen to get you involved and cast as the lead, and that when he'd gone to the financiers, by sheer coincidence, you had been kind of around the corner in a cafe. Is that right? What's the story there?
Yeah, I bumped into him. I was with my voiceover agent and friend Laura, and we were just having a coffee. And Paul was in. I'd seen Paul a few times in the years between us. We worked together for a day on a pop video years before, and every time we'd seen each other in the interim, we'd been like, "Oh, we're going to do something. We are going to do something." And but you have those conversations a lot in this game. And then, yeah, that day he came into the coffee shop. He said, "Look, I've got a film actually, and I really want you to do it." And as he left, in very cynical, long in the tooth fashion, I said to my voiceover agent, I went, "Oh, that's Paul. He's good, but we always say that it won't happen.
Yeah.
Won't happen." And then fairly soon after that, he got in touch and said, "Oh, we've got the money for this. If you want to come and do it." And I'll do anything for Paul.
So, got to talk about violence, obviously. There's some breathtaking stuff in this, and fingers get chopped off, hands do as well. From your point of view as an actor and as a person as well, how difficult are those scenes to film, both from what you're actually doing and as well as the physical aspect of it and dealing with prosthetics and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because from outside doing it, I think most people think that would be a lot of fun. It's like whenever people talk about getting the opportunity to fire guns and things like that, it all looks like that would be the enjoyable stuff. But by necessity and because of, health and safety and whatever, those scenes inevitably are the ones that the days are a bit slower and, there's a bit more hanging about to make sure everything's as it should be and no one gets hurt and it all looks right. And a lot of time is given over to the prosthetics department or whatever to make sure that it's going to not look shit, essentially. And your part of your job is to make sure that it doesn't as well, to make sure that it sort of works. So the acting bits can be quite short, on those days and very contained and very much about the FX that you're working with rather than necessarily, what you're doing. So for most actors, you'd always, if you got a scene where it's two of you across a table from each other, they're the sort of days you get quite excited about, really. And 4 pages of dialogue, where the crew are all bored out of their minds, but the actors are, are really into it. But so, yeah, it's strange that there's a sort of converse thing about it because the stuff that's often most exciting to watch on screen is the most painstaking and slow stuff to film. But by the fact that we only had 3 weeks to shoot Bull, even the effects had to be done at pace, really. And I know Paul was worried a couple of times that he hadn't quite got what he needed, but he's a real master at putting that stuff together and cutting it together in a way that works and generates the necessary recoil in the audience. So, I was excited to see how he was going to do all that stuff in 3 weeks. And it was a learning experience for me, actually, even though I'd worked with other directors who do violence.
Yeah. So, talking, whilst we're on the topic of uncomfortable scenes, maybe to a lesser degree, that scene on the Wurlitzer towards the end. Now, you seem to be dealing with it quite well, but your co-star, I think it's Kevin Harvey, from what I've heard from Paul, is that he had a bad time on that. Is that right?
Yeah, well, he really suffered from motion sickness. And while he had a really difficult time on it and it's the sort of thing that I think is often said about films and people assume that it's kind of apocryphal or it's being said for effect. But genuinely, Kevin was being ill into a bucket between takes on the film. He was really suffering. And yet still, his performance in that is completely convincing. I mean, none of that stuff works if he doesn't appear to be terrified and traumatized and in agony. And he was doing all that despite, us being on take 6 or 7 of him really, really under it and finding it difficult on the Wurlitzer. It's an incredible performance. I mean, it's a brilliant performance anyway, but given those circumstances,
yeah,
these things are not what the awards think about in advance. You know what I mean?
He really was suffering for his art then.
Exactly. Yeah. Because he's fucking great in that. And,
so the other thing I was going to ask you about is, bizarre as this might sound, your eyeballs towards the end. They go black, obviously in pivotal scenes. And I'm just wondering how that was done. Was that CGI? Were you having full eyeball contact lenses?
I lost you.
Hold
on.
You frozen. Hello? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I've just got you back. I lost you for a long time there, for about 40 seconds.
Oh, did you miss the question?
I lost you. I did, yeah, sorry.
Right, okay. Right, so what I was saying was, towards the end, there's your eyeballs, basically, I was getting at. In pivotal scenes, you have black eyeballs, and I'm just wondering how that was done, whether it was CGI or whether you had full eyeball contact lenses.
Right. Well, I hope I'm allowed to say, but that was all CGI, the eyeball stuff.
Right.
Which I was very grateful for. I've had to wear contact lenses before. It's not my favourite thing, I'm very much a spectacle wearer. But yeah, it was all done by CGI, so I was very fortunate with that stuff.
So there's a very busy schedule, 18 days I think it was shot in. With that in mind, and in the nature of what the film is about, what was the most difficult, awkward, troublesome scene for you to shoot, and you personally?
Well, I mean, all the stuff at the fairground had to be done inside 2 days, and that's about a quarter of the film. So we were really rushing around, and there were also, during that, we talked about the possibility of losing scenes that I felt were very important. So I felt under a bit of time pressure there to get all that done. But actually, that ends up being quite useful. It's that energy that you've got of knowing you need to get through stuff, I find actually lends itself sometimes to the necessary volatility. So yeah, there was that. I mean, I think mainly really day one, early first couple of scenes, possibly when you worried you're getting you got to get the tone right that sets for the whole film. So just the first couple of days on any project are normally the trickiest, because you're like, have I forgotten how to act? Do I know what I'm doing? Am I doing this? Is this what he wants? So yeah, that.
Something that's come up with sort of colleagues of mine who love the film is what's the, without wanting to give anything away, but what's the potential of a prequel? Has Paul spoken at all about that? Or have the pair of you spoken at all about that?
No, not at all. No, I'd love to work with Paul again. No, I wish I could tell you we had spoken about it, or there was some talk of it, but there's not. I mean, I hope very much and think we will work together again, but I don't know whether it'll be ball related. Hopefully it could be something funny, couldn't it? Does it have to be something horrible again?
Well, see, now this brings on to my last question. I'll ask every actor this. Your back catalogue of filmography is incredibly diverse. I mean, it is incredibly diverse. It really is. You've played everything from, this kind of character in Bull and Foot Soldier to Ernie Wise, of all people. So I'm just wondering, looking back over the years, in retrospect, are there any roles that you've turned down that you thought, I should have taken that?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not in a position where I turn down loads of work, you know.
You must be. You must be.
No, not really. I mean, most of the time, you know, for the reason that I've done things that are very similar before, I'll go, you know, well, I don't really want to be bashing people up unless it's a really top draw director or a brilliant script or whatever. So, no, normally if it's something wildly different, I'll always do it or try to do it. And if I've turned stuff down, I think my instincts have been pretty good, actually. Nothing that I've ever turned down has ever come up as being, you know, a great bit of work, I don't think. So no, thus far, my decision making has been sterling on that.
So no Hollywood blockbusters then, or dare I even venture?
No, if they come to me with an Hollywood blockbuster, I'll do whatever they like. The only one really, I've done a couple. I did the Basic Instinct 2 and King Arthur Legend of the Sword. So my commercial viability in Hollywood blockbusters is not all it could be. It would be fair to say.
I'm not going to comment on either of those films.
Oh, I probably shouldn't. But there you go.
There you go. Neil, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you ever so much. And please do make a sequel prequel. It's great.
Thanks a lot.